Absolutely.
Well, you know what?
So,
Well, you know what? She's here today, so we want to hear from her. We want to hear what she has to bring to the table
well, you
today.
know what?
Good job.
We're going to do that. But first, we got to hear from you because you came up with a topic
Yes,
that you
you
wanted to
did.
discuss.
Well, I expected you to leave, to give us the lead in, but
Oh,
okay.
no,
But
no,
all right,
no.
okay. You see, they don't give me no heads up. They just throw it at me. So okay, since you brought it up, you start the whole show. But the topic we wanted to talk about is one I think that has become a buzzword for today.
Hmm.
But do people really know what it means to be mindful? Mindfulness is a very important component of our mind's ability to operate in I would say a very or higher level, on a higher level. But I think before we get to the mindfulness, we got to develop a mindset, that helps us to be mindful in all that we do. So, what do you guys think about this topic?
Well, I thought about it, and sometimes I wonder, do we even have minds in this country anymore?
Yeah, good
I mean,
question.
yeah, there are a group of us that do, but in this country, and I've written about this in my blogs, and I've said this on air. I think America is an asylum for the criminally insane.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
when you turn on your television and you see the absolutely absurd stuff that's happening, it makes you wonder: have we lost our damn minds?
You know what? I've gotten to the point where I'm starting to, when I get up in the morning, I used to get up and I turn on my TV just to hear some voices and, just to keep me company while I kind of shuffle around the kitchen and do a few chores and all of that. It's gotten to the point where I don't even, my granddaughter asked me the other day, Grandma, why you don't watch TV anymore? And I said, you know what? There's just so much going on that it just rattles my brain sometimes. And I love smooth jazz. And I've been listening to smooth jazz and allowing smooth jazz to kind of massage my soul as I go about my daily chores in the house. It brings me to a different point than sitting and watching TV or even hearing voices kind of rattle around the house while I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So I think that you're right. There's just so much craziness going on that it befuddles the mind, and trying to be mindful when you haven't even developed a mindset that embraces mindfulness is absurd.
Yeah.
So you got to understand the process. You have to be mindful. What are you mindful of? Or what is your mindset, rather? How are you living? What choices are you making to live? One of the things that I tell people, I live my life in love. I'm in love.
That's right.
I'm in love. I'm in love with myself. I'm in love with the people in my life. I'm in love with my family, my friends. And that's how I choose to live, because God said to love one another. Okay. And yes, there are people who I love from a distance, because you got to be wise enough to know when people are too toxic to be in your sacred space. It doesn't mean I don't love them. It just means I don't want to be infected by the negativity that they're spewing out either in my direction or around me or themselves or anywhere near me. So, you have to decide, first of all, how are you going to shape your mindset so that you can live a life that's mindful? Because if you don't have anything to focus on in terms of how you want to live, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what's good, what's not so good, etc., then you're liable to become victim of anything. And for me, I'm like, I'm not about to become a victim of anything. I know how I want to live. I live my life peacefully. and happily. I put up a post on Facebook today that really just said, with the spinal stenosis, the sciatica, the things that are going on in my life, health wise, I refuse to become a victim of pain. I mean, I'm in pain every day, mostly, except for when I get those shot injections, the epidurals.
Oh, yeah.
That takes me through a few weeks, and I'm pain free, and I feel good. But when I have the pain, I still just choose to live my life peacefully and happily and smile every day, all the time. I think, my grandchildren, like, she's always smiling. She's always happy because I choose to be. That's my mindset. I choose to be to live in peace. I choose to be happy. And then I have to be always mindful that that's my mindset, and not allow things that could come into play and disrupt the choices I make to live the kind of life I want to live.
Well, let me ask this, and I ask this to both of you. How do you define mindfulness?
Well, you know what? A very dear friend of mine, and he's going to call in today. He kind of summed that up as we were talking about mindset and mindfulness. He and I talk about very deep topics on a regular basis. And mindfulness is just a form of consciousness. You have to be always consciously aware of what's going on, how you're feeling, what's going on in your life, how it's affecting you or how it's infecting you. You have to stay conscious. A lot of people are just off in la la land somewhere. They're not paying attention to what's going on with themselves. They're not paying attention to what's going on in their families. They're not paying attention to what's going on in the world. And so they're just somewhere out in outer space somewhere. So when things start to negatively impact their lives, they're lost. They don't know how to deal with it because boom, it hits all of a sudden. Rather than them having that level of mindfulness that these things are happening in the world and preparing themselves just in case some of the craziness comes in their direction. Right. I always say, when I see craziness coming in my direction, I'm gone before it even gets to me, because I choose not to live like that. Been there, done that. When we're younger, there's a lot of things that we don't know, that we do participate in, or we try to help make a difference there. But everybody has to do their own thing with respect to making their lives better, being conscious of what's going on around them, just choosing how they want to live and not letting somebody else choose that for them.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think?
Because I think everything starts with a thought.
Absolutely.
Mindfulness to me is, well, let's back up. So I don't know how many people know my mom has cancer, right? And so
a lot know now.
Yeah, and that's fine. I won't elaborate, but we'll leave it at that. And so that challenges your mindset.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
When you are having to walk through that journey with somebody that you love, you find it challenging. Whatever your mindset was daily, your challenge.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, with that being said, my partner said to me one day, you have to focus on not majoring in the minor things and just, put your mind on the things that are really important, right?
Right.
Which is what, the time you spend with them.
Absolutely.
Right? Expressing how you feel about the person, right? So I think for me, mindfulness is finding this place that I call just a very centered space for me.
Right.
And my thought process just being, I don't focus on the church things anymore.
Right.
I focus on righteous things now instead of church things.
Right.
And so for me, it's being centered and remaining in a peaceful space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Mama C said, and just knowing when I need to sift through and filter out the people, places, and things that may disrupt my peaceful space.
Mhm.
Right?
Absolutely.
And once you do that, it trickles over into your life because again, it all starts with the thought.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And it helps you to maintain, it helps you to achieve and maintain balance in your life.
right.
And that's a very important thing. You know, some people are just off-centered, and that off-centeredness causes them to think on a level that is not necessarily conducive to their overall well-being or the well-being of the people around them.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You know, when I think of mindfulness, I think of a state of awareness.
Mhm. Mhm.
Awareness, what's going on with you,
Right.
what's going on around you. And, you know, we used to say in the hood, being on point, right?
Yeah.
Because you always, that's part to me of being mindful,
Yeah.
knowing what's going on, you know, or being aware of what's going on at all times. Right?
Absolutely.
Because things can happen in a split second.
Yes, they can.
And I see so many people, you know, if you go into New York City on the average day, average weekday, you have people kind of just rushing around mindlessly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you're in the subway, people go right to the edge of the platform
Mhm.
as if the train won't come unless they're standing right
at
on the edge.
Mhm.
You
That
see
always
people-
creeped me out.
Oh,
being on the edge of the subway platform.
Right. Now, if you get me, somehow manage to wrestle me onto the tracks, oh, you was in for a fight because I'm not standing on the edge. I'm standing back against the wall.
That's where I always stood,
Yeah.
the next to the wall.
Right.
Because I'm going to get to the train door
Exactly.
when it comes. So
Exactly.
You're better than me because I'm standing on the step until the train comes,
Right.
and then I get on the train and I'm standing as close to the door as possible.
Right.
Right.
Just in case something jumps
Just
up.
in case.
something jumps
Right.
up. And,
Hello.
and not necessarily the door that people are coming in and out of.
Right.
I stand on the door
That-
by the door where the
Connected
car.
That you can
Oh,
go to the next
okay.
car if you have
Okay.
to.
Because
Yeah.
I got long legs.
Yeah.
So I can jump
To
from
jump,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
But see, I guess that's part of being mindful, right?
Mhm.
When you're aware and you have an understanding. And I think that's what's lacking in this country.
Mm.
You know, I turned on the news today, and they were talking about this Republican debate yesterday.
Mhm.
And one of the questions that the commentator asked was, of the candidates, that is,
Right.
how many of you would support former President Trump for the White House, even if he's a convicted felon? 6 of the 8 said, yeah, we would. You know, how? Now, we're talking about mindfulness, right? And having an understanding. The Republican Party says that they are the party of law and order and of justice.
Really.
Well, they said that when Antifa was protesting, when Black Lives Matter was protesting, we backed the blue. We can't have lawlessness in our streets, but we can vote to have lawlessness in the White House. Where's the mindfulness there?
There is none. I mean, people, it goes back to what you said earlier. The United States has gone buck wild and totally insane in
Mhm.
terms of what is acceptable and what is not
Mhm.
acceptable. And I think now more than ever, it's important that we be mindful of
Mhm.
what's going on around us.
Mhm.
Because if not, we could find ourselves sinking in the abyss of the craziness.
Mhm.
Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
We
How
hear
are
you.
you?
Hold on, just.
Don't try to listen to yourself
Can you hear me
online.
now?
Yeah, we
Yes,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. How's it going?
It's going well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. So am I coming in the middle of the conversation?
That's quite all right.
But it's one that, like I said to them before, you and I had some thoughts on that, and you agreed to call in today because I think your thoughts were very deep, and with respect to my kind of remembering all of that. That was a no-go. You know, I was like, it needs. I just say it needs to come directly from the horse's mouth, as the saying goes. So,
Do you expect me to remember that too?
yes, one of us has to.
Well, I guess just the important parts.
Oh, that's the important part.
Yeah.
So cue me in again on the topic.
It's mindfulness and mindset. You know,
Right.
what are your thoughts on mindfulness and mindset?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a broad range of things. When you talk about mindfulness and mindset, I guess the base would be raising the level of awareness so that you're kind of conscious of exactly what you're being mindful of and exactly what you're taking from that and adding to that. If you are being mindful, that would mean you're raising your awareness of either yourself or your surroundings so that you can process that information in a way that is helpful to you.
Absolutely, I agree.
You know, I think that this conversation is maybe a little deeper than we think, right? You know, because
Right.
when a person is mindful, and you know, mindfulness, in my estimation, means maybe you've connected with the ancestors, right? Maybe you've connected with the higher power,
Mm-hmm.
and it is reflected in how you conduct yourselves and the things you say,
And do.
and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And you find that those people who were mindful, who had this connection with the ancestors, or if you will, the higher power, they became a threat to America and to the establishment. You know, we talk about Dr. King. Dr. King was probably well ahead of his time in his thinking. We talk about Malcolm X, way ahead of both these men, way ahead of their time in terms of mindfulness and their awareness of what was happening in this country and, in fact, around the world during that time. You know, for Dr. King, he was urged not to talk about the war in Vietnam. He said, let's just, or his followers just said, look, let's just focus on civil rights. But Dr. King said, a threat to justice anywhere or just injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Yeah.
So he had to speak out on what he saw happening in Southeast Asia. So I think that mindfulness can be a very, very deep topic. You know, and I think that it's one that we really need to consider. And those who listen, you really need to consider mindfulness carefully because so many of us in this country have lost that mindset, that mindfulness. And because of that, you know, you'll follow anybody. I don't want to throw any names out there, but, you know, we had people that followed, you know, Jim Jones down to Guyana, and 900 of them died. And that's just not, and that's not the only time this has happened. So I think we have to be very, very aware of mindfulness.
And I want to give the textbook definition for mindfulness. It just says that it's the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are, what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we are in this place, it will affect how we vote because we won't be moved by the majority. I think when you reach that place of mindfulness, you become part of that little small percentage of people who are, you know, who know the truth.
And that's where the threat comes in.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you are aware, you will make others around you aware. Right?
Exactly.
And that's where it becomes a problem for the establishment. Because the idea is to keep us I guess, blinded to what's happening, and not allow us to connect with that mindful spirit, right?
Absolutely.
With the higher power.
Absolutely. David,
You know,
what do you think
Mhm.
is one of the things that, or maybe there's more than one, that's negatively impacting on people's ability to be mindful today?
Well, I think that so many people are operating on autopilot. You know, they're just kind of going through life and dealing with it as it comes to them and being reactionary versus really even taking the time to see what is going on, to see what the input is. And they have accepted that. That's why I was speaking of raising the level of awareness. That's a conscious thing that we have to do. It's not something that just comes naturally. We have to actually pay attention and be mindful of what our surroundings are and what we're doing. I mean, if you do something, be aware and kind of understand why you did it versus just doing it because of whatever the stimuli was that caused you to do it. You know, being responsive versus being
reactionary.
Right.
So
right.
I think that raised level of awareness where you take the time and reflect on exactly what's going on around you. And you talked about being connected with the ancestors. If we don't take the time to actually learn about what our history was, learn about what those people did, what they thought, and then take that and internalize that and, you know, decipher it and digest it for ourselves before we react, then, you know, we're not being mindful. But we've got to raise the level of awareness. We've got to stop and be conscious of what's going on around us. We've got to research the things we don't know. And then we got to take the time to use that information in a way that's positive for us.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that is negatively impacting people's ability to be mindful is that they walk around with their phones
Yeah.
everywhere. You know, people outside, you're looking, and I'm watching these people, they're on their phone. They're not even watching what's going on around them. So if a car was about to smash into them, they wouldn't even be aware because they're busy texting or talking on their phone, or they're doing something on some form of technology that draws their attention away from being mindful.
Well, I think there's so
But
many
the intent of
distractions.
technology, for the most part, is to program us anyway. You know, that when they call it programming, that they have made a conscious effort of what they're putting out there into the universe, and they're expecting a certain response.
Well, I think that there's so many distractions, right? You know, for those of our generation, growing up in New York, we had about 6 or 7 channels on television. Now we have thousands of channels on television. You know, so many streaming services that you can sit there for days on end, just, you know, channel surfing. And I think that in this country, people have just zoned out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because in America, one thing we don't like is bad news. Right. Even if it's the truth, we don't want to deal with it. And on the topic of mindfulness, and we had kind of discussed this, we have an important election coming up next year. And in the election of 2020, Black folks went out in record numbers in support of Joe Biden. And, you know, if we're being mindful and we're being true to ourselves, should we be supporting Biden again? Or should we be looking towards someone else, some other leader other than Biden, right? And, you know, I know probably the vast majority of people in this country, Black people that is, are Democrats, right? And, you know, we've always had this idea that, you know, Democrats will take care of us.
Do us right.
Right. And, you know, history has shown that's not the case. And I know for a lot of us, it is the idea of even considering voting for somebody like Trump is just a non-starter. And I get it, right? I think that we're trapped in this two-party system. It's really only a one-party system if you think about it. You're only responsive to the money classes. So, I mean, if we're going to be mindful, who should we be looking to in this next election? And what should we be looking for in terms of, we're going to give you our vote, what should be coming back to the Black community?
Well, you know, my youngest son called me today, very fascinated with the district attorney who just did all this stuff with Trump.
Fonnie
What's her
Willis.
name? Thank you. And how she got him and a host of other people who she just like boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
And my son said to me, she's going to run for president. And I said, you think so? And he said, I think she's going to run for president, and I think she's a good candidate because she's shown no bias, because she went across the board.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't just go for the rappers who were doing things they shouldn't have been doing.
Mm-hmm. And
she didn't just go for people like Trump. She was clearing the table across the board, which shows, you know, that some sense of fairness. And I think at this point, that's what we need to look for, because everybody thought, and I voted Democrat the last election, right? But I think so many of us got caught in that we even missed the fact, and I have to mention this to people all the time. I work in Scranton. Biden is from Scranton. They still have KKK rallies in Scranton.
Wow.
So the probability that he might be a little biased, you know, is there.
Is there,
right?
yeah.
But we didn't take that into consideration. So some people who aren't familiar with this area here in northeastern Pennsylvania, they wouldn't know that. But voters and constituents from this area should have taken that into consideration, that he was from Scranton. So when you really stop and think about it, and you're being mindful, right? We have to note that he hasn't done much of anything. Nothing's been done. And we have to look at the things that he undid, things that were done by another Democrat that were beneficial for us. Right. And then some things that were done by the Republicans. Trump gave all that money to HBCUs, and he reversed that. We have to stop and ask, what?
Yeah,
you
like,
reversed
what?
that?
Right.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought you were a Democrat.
That's
you know?
insane.
Yeah,
But
that's insane.
Again, we are focused on the blue.
Right.
Right. And so we have to, you're right, we have to be mindful about this next election and what we should be looking for. And right now, we can't say, looking at a candidate, we have to be looking for a potential candidate, because right now we don't even have, to me, in my opinion, being mindful, right? I don't see a candidate that I think is worthy of my vote,
Yeah,
including Uncle Joe. I don't,
Right.
yeah,
you know.
Absolutely. I agree.
So-
And, you know, I think that the more mindful we become, the better we can look at situations that are negatively impacting on us. And until more of us become mindful, then the repetition of just voting is going to continue. And life is more about who you're voting for and what that person brings to the table, not because you think that's a better candidate. Well, do you know that's a better candidate? You know, mindfulness requires a lot of thought, you know?
You know, I think that.
So do you believe that the population at large are going through the process of being educated and making an educated decision, or are they depending on those of us who have done that to give them reliable information on which to base their vote?
Can I say something?
Go right ahead.
I think that not just in when we look at this topic. I think across the board, there's the majority, right, and then there is a smaller percentage of people who kind of influence the majority, and then it's the small percentage of people who kind of know the truth. So that smaller percentage of the larger population are going to influence them to vote in the direction that they want them to vote in. And the majority is going to be exactly who they are, the majority who are clueless as to really what's going on in the world, right? And they're going to vote based on how they're being led. And then there will be people like the three of us who will vote based on hardcore performance and data.
Absolutely.
And that's just what it is. That's just not even with the election. That's in every area.
I think that if a person's in a leadership position, say a teacher, that teacher can bring out so much potential in a student, right? Anyone who is in a position of leadership, can share that information and wisdom with others to make them better. Well, if you looked at the debate last night, or part of it, or you saw the highlights of it, 6 of the 8 candidates said they would vote to support Donald Trump, even if he were a convicted felon. And Chris Christie said, listen, I don't know if he's going to be convicted or not, but his actions were beneath the office of president and he was booed. So that tells you the mindset of the people, because it starts at the top, right? If you want to raise people up, you can. Same way if you want to tear them down, you can. And what's happening in this country, there's a lot of tearing down and not a lot of building up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my fear is that this election cycle, what will happen is Joe Biden and other Democratic candidates will show up at a couple of key churches.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Show up at church, sit there, act like they have some rhythm to keep up with the choir. After church, have a piece of chicken with the pastor, and all of the congregation and surrounding congregation will say, hey, Biden is our guy. However, what are we getting from the Democratic Party and from Joe Biden in particular?
Absolutely.
If you're going to, the way business is conducted in this country, you give something in order to get something. And for the Black community, we're losing. Affirmative action is no more. And this happened under a Democratic administration. Women's rights going away under a Democratic administration.
Yeah.
So we've got to get something. If we're going to go out to those polls and go out in the numbers that we did 4 years ago, or nearly 4 years ago, we got to get something. We can't come away empty-handed. We can't afford it.
I agree.
Yeah. David, what do you think people need to do to up their mindfulness, their ability to be more mindful about everything that affects their lives?
When we talked about the majority of people, and I see them as sheep for various reasons. Some of them don't believe that things can be any different. Some don't believe that they can do any more than what they're doing. And there's a saying that was put out a long time ago that said a hungry man cares nothing about politics. He's too busy trying to feed his family. So it's going to be up to. We really need people to understand that they are leaders. Each one of us on this phone now need to be talking to people, need to be at least sparking ideas. I do a podcast called Let's Talk because it's about you being in the grocery store next to somebody, you don't know what they do. They could be the best brain surgeon, they could be an inventor, they could be whatever, but because we don't communicate, we don't know.
True.
Mhm.
All of us who do know should be a beacon, should be an inspiration for those that don't, if nothing else, to spark ideas, to spark thoughts, to get people thinking and to get people talking to each other, because that's where ideas are born.
Now, David, you're from Texas, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Now, Texas is an interesting state. Very interesting. Texas is part of the Bible Belt, correct? And your governor, right? I mean, the Bible makes it pretty clear. And even in America, right? In this country, we have the Statue of Liberty that says, give us your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, right? And your
Right.
governor is essentially mining the river between Mexico and America. Those, from what I
He's
understand,
done a lot more than that.
yeah, those barriers he put out,
He is definitely
there's barbed wire underneath.
right.
Right,
He's a word.
right. So I mean, and yet I can't quite figure out what's happening down. I mean, I was stationed in Texas. I loved it when I was down there, but I can't quite understand what's happening down there. I mean, history is being rewritten now. Instead of slave people being brought here and enslaved, we were long distance commuters. So basically, history is being rewritten to say that, well, there really wasn't a slave trade. They were just looking for better opportunity here in America.
Really?
Yeah, and Texas kind of leading, well, Texas and Florida now, it's kind of like a race to the bottom. And, you know,
Yep.
you have a senator out
You know,
there.
Texas does a lot of the textbooks for schools too, right?
Yes, that's the
They come
problem.
out of Texas, so the programming is starting early.
Yeah.
But I mean, Texas is, you know, the good old boy system has been deeply rooted. But at the same time, there's been a lot of changes. I mean, there's gradual changes. There's somebody who's going to go against Cruz this next time around. I think he has a good, Colin Allred has a good chance of beating him just because of the realities of his record. But there's still a lot of deep-seated good old boy mentality that's going to stick with that ideology no matter what. It doesn't have to make sense. It doesn't have to go with Bible principles or anything else. And, you know, it's deeply rooted in some people's personal beliefs that something's being taken away from it. And it's one of those things, like I said, it's deeply rooted, but I have a good amount of faith that things are gradually changing. I mean, we're at a point now where so much of what people do and say is not hidden. You know, the media can't hide things now because of the advent of the internet, and people's real records and their real actions are really starting to show. And for those people that pay attention, you know, it gives them an option to make a different choice.
Well, I think that's the problem, paying attention. You know, in America, we don't have an
Right.
attention span, you know, for things that are important.
Mhm.
We'll sit there and we'll watch,
22
you know,
seconds.
the Real Housewives of Atlanta.
Yeah,
But,
you're right.
You know, when it comes to something of substance, we don't seem to have any interest in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you talk about things changing, I think the problem is the lack of mindfulness. We don't see the changes. We're not aware. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said, you know, the Bible said that the earth would be destroyed by fire, right? It was by water, and then the Bible said the earth would be destroyed by fire. Now, I don't believe the earth is going anywhere, but I'm acutely aware of what's happening in Maui, what's happening in Canada, what's happening all along the West Coast, California, wildfires. I'm acutely aware of the threat from global warming, right? Yet, the politicians will tell us, don't believe your lying eyes, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yes. You know, we have the polar ice caps melting. We have sea levels rising. We have people dying this summer from heat. And they're telling you, oh, don't worry about that. You know, listen, let's talk about the southern border, right? The U.S. economy is in shambles. Let's talk about something like Barbie. Did you hear that there were some senators that were upset because Barbie had an abortion? right?
Oh my God.
Not let's fix a broken economy, not let's fix the infrastructure. And this is the problem with mindfulness. Both parties have signed on to this nonsense.
What were you saying, David?
Because mindfulness
People are more
requires
concerned about this Little Mermaid being black.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh, hello.
You know, where is the mindfulness?
Yeah.
Now, well, you were saying.
mindfulness requires self-work,
Mhm.
right? You
Yes.
can't, you don't just wake up one day and
You're mindful,
right?
exactly.
So,
Right.
I'm a firm believer in being very careful about what we're taking in.
Mhm.
Right?
Absolutely.
Our eye gates, our ear gates. You have to be careful, even even the way we eat,
Mhm.
what we take in. So
Absolutely.
we have to be careful because those are the things that shape your mind, your will, your emotions, and your intellect. It's
Mhm.
all based on what comes in through those gates. Right?
Absolutely.
So you expecting people to just wake up and be mindful? They're not going to be. You have to. That's something you have to work on.
Well,
Absolutely.
How many more people do the sharks have to eat up? Apparently, this summer the sharks have been going wild.
And the killer
attacking
whales.
people and the killer whales.
Mhm.
Like, what the hell? Don't people see what's happening, or do they give a damn?
They don't see.
They don't see.
That's the problem.
Mhm.
They don't see. Because, if you have a connection to the higher power, to your ancestors, you are shown things clearly.
You are shown clearly.
Sometimes you ever get that feeling, I shouldn't go down this block.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
You get those messages, but when your mind has been basically turned to peanut butter, right? You're not able to receive those messages.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big impediments to mindfulness is religion.
Oh yeah.
I've had people come to me and tell me,
Yeah.
God does not want you to think, just do.
Right.
Wait a minute.
Are you kidding me?
How do you perceive anything without thinking?
But can I ask you this?
Sure.
Why do you think that the politicians go to the churches?
Yeah.
Why do you think they go?
Because
to
the people
churches?
are being conditioned and have been conditioned since slavery to believe everything that they hear in church. And the pastors are the primary problem with respect to what Black people are receiving
because
in
the
church.
pastors are part of that smaller group of the population who are influencing the larger group.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that's why they go to the churches.
Think about this.
Mhm.
Think about this. You're talking about influence. We've got a whole group of people now, young people, who are influencers. And you're talking about being connected to our ancestors. Are we even connected to our parents? Are they even connected with their parents? And the thing about that is, you've got to really see that disconnect and understand that the world that we grew up in no longer exists. So keep trying to reach back and pull up remnants of that. It no longer exists. So what I'm saying is change is going to have to come through some evolutionary process that's going to take place. And the young people are going to have to be the ones who are taking the lead in doing that. We're at a point where we need to be inspiring them, giving them knowledge from the past, and let them take it and do with it what they will, because they're going to be what changes things for us. The world we live in, the world we grew up in, no longer exists, and it's not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's sad but true.
That's a real mindful statement there, and a reality that when we're gone, the younger folks, well, who are they being influenced by, and what,
and who are they influencing?
And who are they influencing? Exactly. So if we're not able to get through to them about what it is they need to do in order to bring us all to a better place and space, oh God, it's scary. The thought of what could be happening 20 years from now, 50 years from now, it's scary.
But you know what I want to say in
It's
defense
scary
of
what's happening right now.
Oh yeah.
in defense of the young people.
Yeah,
I
if
think
you, like I
that
said,
they
connecting
show
with their
us,
parents.
the media
Think
shows
about-
us what they
I've
want us
heard
to see.
parents now talk about their children as being, what is it, entitled bleeps. You know, they feel like everybody owes them everything. You know, and they're not required to grow up. You know, when I came along, I left home when I was 16. You got people who are still at home with their parents who are 40, right? Okay. You got kids who are not gaining life skills to be able to be out on their own and be productive, so they have to depend on their parents. The male and female roles in a relationship have changed so much that, you know, the structure of a family is basically being torn apart in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. And then, of course, we've got the other factors in this country and in life that serve to separate us. So, like I'm saying, those of us who know need to be mindful enough to identify some of the people who are younger, who can be influencers, who can bring a different perspective and thought to the problems that we have now, and who can take what we give them, make it better, and create something for the future.
Now, you wanted to defend the young people.
I do, because I think that we have painted a picture of young people based on what the media shows us.
That's
And
true.
they're showing us exactly what they want to get us to believe, right? This is, again, what they do. This is what they do. And this is how they shape and mold the way we view the world, right? So I think it's a lot more young people who are, for lack of a better term, who are doing their thing and doing it well and doing a good job of it. But they're not showing us them. They're showing us, you know, the Cardi B's and the whatever that other girl's name is that's twerking in front of Popeyes.
Oh, okay.
I can't take
I haven't
it.
seen that one.
Yeah, I can't.
I don't
take
want
it.
to see that.
What
But-
are we showing us?
Well,
What the media and everybody, what are we
but
showing?
we are the media, my dear. We are the media. We are the media. We are the
No,
teachers. We are the parents. We are the attorneys. We are all of those things. And so we have to make up our mind, and with this mindfulness piece, that we make a conscious effort to train our minds, because that's how you get to a place of mindfulness. It requires daily
training. Yes.
And again, your mind is shaped and molded by what you take in. Eye gate, ear gate. This is why what they show us is so important, right? So we don't even have to defend it to the media. We just have to teach the babies and the younger people that this is all a facade.
Right.
What you see, this is not real.
Smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors.
Exactly. This is not real.
And you know, David, I think there's one thing that I kind of agree what you said about, you know, the world we grew up in is gone. Well, yes and no. It's still within us, right? We still remember how we were raised, and it is incumbent upon us to pass that on to our children. You know, because we came here as Africans. We came here as Wolof. We came here as Mandinka. We came here as Ashanti. And now, after 400 years of being here, we reduced ourselves to N-words as for men and 5-letter words with a B for women, right? So we can get back to who we were and take on that mindset. Then we'll become mindful. Then we won't worry about the Democrats or Republicans. We'll begin to build our own situation.
Absolutely.
You know, fortunately, there's a place down in Georgia where I think about 60 Black families bought a couple of 100 acres of land, and they're building basically their version of a Black Wall Street down there,
Awesome.
where it is just all Black, just Black people, collective economics, and they're building their own homes, their own communities, right? self-preservation. And that's something that we have gotten away from and we got to get back to, because, in the next couple of years, things are going to get really, really critical.
Yeah, I believe that.
When you were saying, when young lady was saying that, that that there are a lot of young people doing their thing. And that is very, very true. There's a lot of young people who are making money, who are making moves, who are doing this. But what it used to be, it didn't used to be about me. It used to be about us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It didn't used to be about, I'm going to get rich and I'm going to show everybody and I'm going to do this and that. We did things for the good of a community. We did things for the good of us being able to move forward. Now, if everybody is for themselves, you can do more with more people. You can do more as a group than you can as individuals. But what is going on, society is separating people into individuals. We have no goals and no purposes together. That's what moves us forward.
Mm.
That's what changes things. It's not an individual getting rich and having this and having that and saying, okay, look at me, now you come be like me, versus saying, here, let me show you how I did this and let's do something better together.
I think that a lot of that is happening, but we're not seeing it.
Exactly.
Many countries in Africa are emerging economically, right? And not only are they emerging economically within their country, they're now in a position where they've gone to Europe and demanded back some of the antiquities that were stolen out of Africa. So for Black and brown people across the globe, there is an awareness, right? You ask anybody right now, who's the most educated class in this country? Black women.
Black women.
So something has happened and has been happening for years, but the media only shows us,
there you go,
and who's in the most
the drug dealers,
mm-hmm.
The people
Black
that,
women.
yeah, they focus on the negativity,
mm-hmm.
but there is so much positivity that is happening, but they'll never show it to you. The idea is, once you're a slave, to keep you a slave, to tell you there's no hope, you have no future, you have no past, right? And as long as
I'm back to saying again, it's not what they tell us. What do we tell us? What do we show us?
Well, it all depends who we is. Now, if you're sitting in church every Sunday, what you're doing is telling exactly what you see in the media.
Hello.
Right?
Hello.
You're told, hey, servant, serve your master as you would serve God,
and
right?
Don't question it.
And don't question
not question
Let
it.
me tell you,
Right.
I once I had called the office of the church I was going to at the time because the pastor had made a statement that to women that if they were in a abusive relationship, if their husbands were beating them,
They're supposed to
they're
stay.
supposed to stay because God is using them to transform the abuser. I'm like, me and two other women looked at each other and said, did we hear that?
Right.
Like, what the hell?
Right.
On Monday, I called that office and I wanted an answer to that. Ask me, did I ever get a response?
You won't.
I never got a response. Matter of fact, I think I became an albatross after that, So, the bottom line here is in church, you're not supposed to have a mind.
Mm-mm.
Mindfulness and mindset do not go in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You're supposed, whatever the pastor tells you is what you're supposed to believe. And if you waver or falter from what you're being taught in church, you
the devil.
You the devil.
They gotta come lay hands on you.
You the devil. They gotta, yeah.
And the gentleman asked the question that he said that who is teaching the community? Like, what are we doing for the community as a whole? But here's the deal. I don't belong to a sorority, but my son belongs to a fraternity, and I watch the Divine Nine, right? And the these are educated people, right? But they do a lot more for communities than we give them credit for. You know, I spend a lot of time down in the Philadelphia area, and they're very active down there. And I watch them collectively work together to do things that no one else is doing in our communities. Down to simple things like making sure Black women are getting mammograms, down to making sure that Black people are taking care of cardiovascular things. Just things that some people based on socioeconomic status may not even be educated on, because we know that there's always disparities in healthcare and always disparities in education and stuff when it comes to people of color. So there are people who are doing things in the community. I'm doing things in the community.
Mhm.
Ron is doing things in the community. You're doing things in the community. So there are
I'm
plenty
not
of people
saying
who
that
are
it's
doing
not
things.
happening. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. And
Mhm.
if that's what you heard, I apologize, but that wasn't my intent.
Okay.
What I'm looking at is because, I've done things my whole life
Mm-hmm.
that has made difference in people's lives. So I'm not saying nobody's doing anything. What I'm saying is, let's look at the results. Are we better now than we were 10 years ago? Are we better now than we were 20 years ago? Are we going back to a better society now?
I
Are
think
we
that
better off?
I think in some areas we are better off, and I think in other areas we miss the mark. And I think that not just us. I think in any population of people, there are areas that we grow and we become better in those areas, and other areas that maybe we need to go back to basics. But am I going to say that we're in such a horrible place? No, I'm not going to say we're in a horrible place. I think morally we've lost. I think morally, no, I'm not saying what you. I'm giving you my opinion based on what you said, and I think morally we leave a lot to be desired. We've lost a lot morally.
From a moral perspective, I agree with you.
But I think developmentally, and education and career and all those other areas, we kind of rose to the occasion. So if we could just bring some balance, right?
Yeah,
There's that word
yeah, yeah.
that I'm big on all the time.
Mhm.
But if we have some balance, then we'll have it together in totality. But for right now, I'm gonna say we're lacking some things morally, but we're excelling in a lot of areas. So
My thought is just the opposite. I think one of the worst things that happened to Black people was the end of segregation. Prior to segregation or the end of segregation, we controlled the economics of our communities. We had the gas stations. We couldn't go to the White Hospital. We had our own Black hospitals, our own Black stores. We shopped in our own communities.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the paperwork was signed, all of a sudden we couldn't shop amongst our own anymore. We couldn't wait to get to Macy's where they shopped, Macy's and Saks Fifth Avenue. Well, for us, the economy of the Black community collapsed. And I can remember in the 70s watching the Bronx burn day after day.
Mm-hmm.
So there was never any reinvestment in the area for years.
Right.
I think the idea is people want to keep certain areas depressed so they can come in and buy everything up cheap.
Buy everything up
Right?
cheap. Yeah.
So, we weren't able to buy it up. I mean, you could buy a house for $1 in the 70s, right? But you had to have the money readily available to fix it up.
Exactly.
And the banks were saying, no, it's a redlined area. We ain't giving you no loans. So prior to, the end of segregation, we had our own banks. I was watching something the other day talked about Freedom National up in Harlem and how they loan money to start Essence magazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we don't have those options.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go to the big banks that have no respect for us, right? And that want to put additional criteria on us to get a loan. So I think we've regressed in so many areas. And I think that one of the big problems, and I keep going back to this, is what we're taught. And it's not just the church.
Right.
it's the mosque, it's the temple, anywhere where we are going to see religious programming, right? We're going to come home with this slavery
Being
mentality.
programmed.
Yeah, that's true.
Religious
True.
programming.
Uh-huh.
We're going to come home and saying,
We
well,
were talking about things being better and us being more educated. This that with the very situation that you're talking about right now, situation that exists right now. If we look at it over these past years that I just spoke about, we have more Black millionaires, more Black billionaires, more Black people in positions of power, heads of corporation. Yet and still the situation that you just spoke of is where we are. So we look at what is real progress. Is it we got more millionaires? Is that progress? We got more billionaires.
yes and no. You know something?
If we're living in the same condition as we were prior to having that, what is the benefit?
Well, I think the problem is you said we have more millionaires and billionaires, and we talk about power, right? The problem is we don't
We have
realize
more educated people.
we don't have the power, right? Let me give you an example. One of the most powerful forms of media right now is hip hop. Hip hop originated right here in this country in the Black community, but who's making the money off hip hop? That movement has started in the Bronx. It went worldwide.
Why?
Everywhere you go, people can recite a rap song, right? You got Jewish rappers, Japanese rappers, everybody is rapping, but it started with us. But where's the money going?
Exactly.
If we just took half of the money, a third of the money we got from hip hop, not just from the music, but from merchandising and everything else, we wouldn't have to live in rundown tenements. We could have our own communities, have our own hospitals again, our own schools again, but the money's flowing out of the community and not into
the community.
And that's just the power of
But
hip
think
hop.
about this. Think about what was, I know we were expressing ourselves and the experiences we were having and so on and so forth. But what was the message in the music? You talk about the influence it had. What was the message in the music? And you talk about us calling our women this and us being this word and that word. What was the message in the music? Yeah, money was made, but what was the message in the music? What was the programming?
See, we didn't control the content, right? I grew up listening to the first rap record, Rapper's Delight, right? There was no cursing. There was no talk of violence. But all of a sudden now, somebody came up with the term gangster rapper, right?
Gangster
Then
rap.
all of a sudden, we had to fit the mold of the gangster rapper. All of a sudden, now high capacity guns, assault weapons found their way into the Black community, right? Where did that come from? We don't make them in this country, not AK-47s.
Did we have to? You said we had to. Did we have to?
Well, you know something? Studies will show if you take people economically depressed, right, and who believe that they don't have hope, a percentage of them will turn to crime, right? And that's happened in the Jewish community. In New York, we had a lot of Jewish gangsters, right? Then you had the mafia. What did they do? Poor people who were looking for a way out, who turned to crime. We got to keep it real. This country was founded by criminals, right? We got to be honest, right? This country was founded by very succcable criminals.
Exactly.
And this country still run by very successful criminals.
And that's the truth.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is what is it that we have power over? Are you telling me that we're completely powerless?
We're not powerless, but again, we have to start this process of mindfulness training, because you're looking for people to know the power that they have and no one
Right.
has helped them to come to that realization. So you have a bunch of, for lack of a better way to say it, deaf, dumb, and blind people walking around. That's that majority, right? That we were talking about.
Yeah.
That are just deaf, dumb, and blind, and they're clueless as to what's going on. So you're looking for them to do something that they don't have the capacity to do at this point. And so training the babies, and then realizing that when you say, even when Ron talked about segregation and things being ended and stuff like that, those were things that we didn't have the power to do that.
Mhm.
So we have to just that's why education is important. That's why socioeconomic status is important. That's why all these things that we want to look at and say, these are not important things to our community. What's important is that we come together to fix it. We need socioeconomics to fix what's broken.
We do.
We need education to fix what's broken.
Absolutely.
So we need to come to the table equipped to really have effective change, and not have beautiful people like you and I debating over such minor little details, because we all have the same agenda. Yeah, we have the same agenda, so we want to make sure that we, get the work done. Don't lose focus.
And let me just add this, right? One of the major problems for Black people over the last 400 years, we have been taught and trained to believe that somebody's coming to save us.
Yeah.
When we are our own saviors, right?
Hello.
It was not people from outside that built the Black Wall Street. We did that.
Absolutely.
And there were other major cities like that around the country. We did that. And just one generation after slavery. So we have the power, but we just don't know it because we don't have that mindset.
Right.
Because we're still thinking like slaves.
Absolutely.
Once we break that, we're good to go.
Once that cycle is broken, we can move forward in a way that is conducive to collective empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are not going to want to hear it, but one of the first things we have to do is start to dismantle this organized church thing, because it has continued for generations to keep us held hostage and to stagnate growth in our communities. It's designed to control us. And let me just say, that doesn't mean you can't have a belief system.
Absolutely.
What that means is that you don't need the pastor to tell you what you need to do. And
you don't need a church with 4 walls.
No.
In order to connect with the God power within you. What you need to do is do that work. Do that mindfulness work, and you will connect to that God power within you. Then you will begin to see that you have the power to elevate yourself, your loved ones, your community in ways that are conducive to our collective growth and well-being.
If that's what you choose
you won't
to
just
do.
think it, you'll know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
Thinking somebody's going to come save you.
Absolutely.
Thinking somebody should come save you.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
even worse.
That's even worse.
And you know something? I was just really fascinated by what you said. All this came from the mouth of the apostle.
It is what it is.
But you know what? Sooner or later, Ron, we all wake up.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I couldn't have said
when I
it
left
better.
my
Listen,
church, I left
couldn't
the
have said it
pastor
better.
a checkmate letter.
Mm-hmm.
No, you didn't.
yes,
Checkmate letter.
yes, I did.
But you know what I would say, Ron is making light of it. But if you ask a bunch of church people, I'm a backslider.
You're a
They
backslider.
like, you better stay away from Romane. Romane don't go to church no more.
Right.
Romane has elevated.
Has elevated to the next level.
Because you know what happened? Wait a minute. Let's be realistic now. When one of us would run away from the plantation, who would tell on us?
You know who?
You know Romane ran away last
That's
night.
right.
So it's the same thing in church.
And she went that way.
Right. You know Romane done ran away from the church, right? We have that mentality like,
absolutely.
Oh no, we got to go tell Master what's going on here.
After a while, you the heathen.
Yeah.
You the heathen.
Yeah.
You now in the arms of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So mindfulness, until we collectively as a people begin to do the mindfulness work and develop a mindset that is conducive to us as a collective body of people, nothing's going to change for the better.
Not for us.
Not for
Mhm.
not collectively.
Or-
Individually, people will become billionaires and millionaires, and they'll have a $1 million house. I was reading something about one of our ex-presidents, which I will not talk about right now, who has an $8 million house in one place and an $11 million house in another place, and he's okay. I'm not gonna go there.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, okay, but there's just so many of us who are in need of the opportunity. And if I had that kind of money, I've learned to enjoy and appreciate simplicity.
Mhm.
And give me a little cottage by the I just want to be by the ocean. I just want to be by the water. I love water. So I don't need an $8 million house in one place and an $11 million house in another place. Why? You know what I'm saying? I'd rather put that money to better use by creating something that will help elevate us.
Mhm.
That's it.
Mhm.
Mm.
Well, I tell you, money is a great motivator, right? You forget your morals, you forget your upbringing, you forget your real beliefs.
You forget a lot.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. And what's sad is the president you're talking about. I'm sorry, brother, but when you went to Africa, one of the things you did was say that to African countries, you have to accept homosexuality. And look, I'm not saying, right, to each his own, you love who you love, but you don't go to another country, tell them what they have to do
Absolutely.
in order to get aid, right?
Yeah.
You don't do that to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You ain't doing it to Ukraine to get bombs.
Hello.
So why would you do that to the place where you say you come from?
Well,
There's a problem there.
sometimes Uncle Toms are invisible to
To the naked eye.
to the
right?
naked eye,
Mhm.
and so an Uncle Tom is an Uncle Tom, and a Aunt Mamie is an Aunt Mamie. What can I tell you?
Shucking and jiving.
Shucking and jiving, pretending you care about your people.
I see that we're getting close to that time, right? I mean, we could go on and on.
Yes.
Because things are starting to get a little heated, right?
Yeah. Let's not get in trouble here.
That's what happens when the right energy starts flowing.
Hello.
Right? But we have to make way for this next show that's going to be coming on. So please stay tuned to Gynesis Radio. You're about to hear some hot music coming from the next show.
Hello.
So, but we thank you all for listening. We thank you, David, for joining us. And we'll be back for another Thoughtful Thursday next Thursday.
All right. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Are you going to be here next week? You're not even going to be here next week.
Y'all will be.
Oh, we will be.
Yeah.
What's next week?
He's just
Yeah,
telling
Next
us
Thursday.
that. Next Thursday.
What's
He's going to be in
Oh,
South
I'll be
Carolina.
here next Thursday. Then I'm
Okay,
not
so